Hong Kong political reform framework announced in Beijing. Pan-Democrats condemn the reform framework as Occupy Central plans protests. And Fernando Choi re-elected chief executive of Macau.
Good evening. The National People's Congress Standing Committee has unveiled a framework for Hong Kong's political reform. It stipulates that starting from 2017, the SAR's chief executive may be elected by universal suffrage. Each candidate must have the endorsement of more than half of all the members of the nominating committee, which will nominate 2 to 3 candidates. And as Evelina Leung reports, Beijing has accused those who insist on meeting international standards of stirring up trouble.
The National People's Congress Standing Committee today adopted a decision on Hong Kong's political reform framework at the end of a week-long meeting. Basic Law Committee Chairman Li Fei outlined the framework at a news conference this afternoon. Starting from 2017, the election of Hong Kong's chief executive may be carried out by universal suffrage. The number of members, composition and formation method of the nominating committee will be modeled after the current election committee. The nominating committee shall nominate 2 to 3 candidates. Each candidate must have the endorsement of more than half of all members of the nominating committee. All eligible voters will have the right to vote in the CE election. And lastly, the CE-elect will have to be appointed by the Central People's Government. If Hong Kong is unable to adopt universal suffrage for selecting the chief executive in accordance with legal procedures, the method used for the preceding term shall continue to apply. No changes will be made to the formation method and voting procedure for the 2016 Legislative Council election. Li Fei said he hopes today's decision will clear up any misconceptions about the Basic Law. He stressed that the chief executive must be someone who loves the country and Hong Kong to ensure the SAR's long-term prosperity and stability, as well as to protect the country's sovereignty, security, and development interests. Li stressed civic nomination of CE candidates does not comply with the Basic Law. He also said there's no set international standards in implementing universal suffrage. He accused some people of trying to turn their own views and opinions into the so-called international standards to mislead the public. The Basic Law Committee chairman hopes today's announcement will put discussions back onto the right track. NPC Standing Committee member Rita Fan called on the Pan-Democrats to think carefully before taking any action.
And I would suggest to them not to make a choice right now. Let the situation develop a bit, get to understand the views of the central authorities, and also give themselves more flexibility. Hear what the people of Hong Kong are saying, not just their
Evelina Leung, TVB News.
But the whole.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying called today's decision by the NPC Standing Committee a major step forward in Hong Kong. He warned against the failure to move forward, which would affect the city's prosperity.
If we're willing, the majority of Hong Kong people, and that is some 5 million eligible voters, will no longer be bystanders in the next CE election. We will all be able to vote for the CE in 2017 through one person, one vote at the polling stations. The decision of the NPCSC today is not the final step. To put the decision into implementation, we need to obtain a 2/3 majority support from all members of the electorate. Failing that, we would have no choice but to revert to the status quo for the 1,200 members election committee to select the CE, and our 5 million Hong Kong people will be deprived of the voting right that they would otherwise be entitled. We cannot afford a standstill in our constitutional development, or else the prosperity or stability of Hong Kong will be at stake.
In Macau, the election of the fourth-term chief executive took place today, with the incumbent, Fernando Choi, being the sole candidate. He was re-elected with 96% of the election committee votes. A group of pro-democracy protesters voiced their dissatisfaction outside the election venue, demanding universal suffrage. Owen Fung reports.
The election with only one candidate began at 10 a.m. 396 out of the 400 election committee members cast their ballots. The voting process was over in 20 minutes, and Fernando Choi was declared the fourth-term chief executive-elect. He won the backing of 380 election committee members, or 96% of the votes, higher than the 94% he received 5 years ago. There were 13 blank votes and 3 invalid ballots. Choi said the blank vote served as a reminder to him that he needs to do a better job. In his victory speech, Choi pledged to carry out his responsibilities with humility and gratefulness. He said winning his re-election means new challenges, new commitments, and the start of implementation of what he had promised in his election platform. Choi will be sworn in for a new term on December 20th, which is the 15th anniversary of Macau's return to Chinese rule. However, not all are satisfied with his re-election. Members of the New Macau Association and some other Macau residents staged a protest outside the election venue, calling for universal suffrage. Sulu So, a member of Macau Conscience, says he hopes members of the election committee will understand they do not have the mandate of the people to vote on their behalf. Billy Chow, an associate professor at the University of Macau, says while pro-democracy protests in Macau are rather small in scale, the government has been responding to them in a heavy-handed manner. He's concerned that tensions will continue to rise in the enclave. Owen Fung, TVB News.
Pan-Democrats have condemned Beijing's announcement on political reform, and the Occupy Central campaign will begin mobilizing various groups and parties in the fight for what they describe as genuine universal suffrage. The civil disobedience movement is staging a rally at Tamar Park. Stephanie Choi reports.
The undemocratic decision of the Standing Committee not only takes away the universal suffrage, the right to universal suffrage of Hong Kong people. Actually, it has also inflicted a serious blow to one country, two systems.
Along with members of pro-democracy groups, Benny Tai announced the Occupy Central movement will begin to organize a series of protests and actions. They will launch a full-fledged Occupy Central campaign at an appropriate time. The decision by the NPC Standing Committee has also angered pan-democratic legislators. 23 of them made clear today they will vote against the government's reform proposal.
So let us just put behind us all those false hopes, and let us begin a new democratic movement which is marked by the Occupy Central movement.
Democratic Party legislator Emily Lau also condemns Beijing's decision, describing the reform package as disgraceful. Lau doesn't believe the people of Hong Kong will be satisfied with the decision by the NPC Standing Committee, urging them to persevere in the struggle for democratic reform.
So I call on the Hong Kong people to remain calm, but use whatever means you can find to show your displeasure, your disappointment and anger. We will work with you. We will continue to work with all the Hong Kong people to fight for democracy. One day we will prevail.
I am told our Stephanie Choi is over at Tamar Park right now. Stephanie, what is happening there?
Hey, Sonya. Right now, the crowd is getting bigger and bigger at Tamar Park, and many of the participants have actually brought props along with them to make noise, demanding that their desire for democracy be heard by the government. A lot of them are also wearing black with yellow ribbons to symbolize their dissatisfaction with the National People's Congress Standing Committee's framework. And the rally will end at about 9 p.m. tonight, and that's when student group Scholarism will be marching from Tamar Park to the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Wan Chai, which is where Li Fei will be staying after he arrives in Hong Kong tonight. And that's where the group will be staging a protest. Now, that's all I have for you. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks to Stephanie Choi outside the central government headquarters. Other news, and anti-government protests in Pakistan have turned deadly. Thousands of demonstrators tried to storm the official residence of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, sparking clashes that killed at least 3 people and injured almost 400. As protesters began removing shipping containers used as barricades, police fired tear gas at them. Demonstrators started to regroup at daybreak Sunday and tried repeatedly to make their way through police to reach Sharif's home. The violence has raised the stakes in the 2-week sit-in, led by opposition politician Imran Khan and cleric Tahir al-Qadri. They want Sharif to step down. The Prime Minister is refusing to go. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone while visiting Japan. Modi and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe toured an ancient Buddhist temple today in Kyoto. The goal of Modi's trip is to get Kyoto to serve as a template for his vision of building 100 smart cities in India. The 63-year-old is embarking on an intense month of diplomacy. In addition to receiving Chinese President Xi Jinping, he'll also meet with U.S. President Barack Obama in Washington as he seeks to carve out a stronger role for India as a global player.
An international manhunt for a 5-year-old boy with a brain tumor came to a dramatic end last night when his parents were arrested in Spain. The couple insists they were just trying to get their son better care abroad.
The parents have been arrested. They've been taken to a police station. There are no winners in this situation.
No winners, because authorities knew Asha King's parents were attempting to get him alternative cancer treatment for his severe brain tumor. In a video posted online, the boy's father expressed disgust with authorities for characterizing them as criminals who put their son's life at risk.
We were most disturbed today to find that his face is all over the internet and newspapers, and we've been labelled as kidnappers.
Asha's father admits they took him from the hospital because England doesn't have the proton beam cancer therapy they desperately wanted him to receive. He claims the moment they discussed getting the treatment abroad, the hospital reportedly threatened them with a protection order if they didn't follow their medical advice. This is why the King family, including Asha's 6 siblings, fled Britain. Interpol first tracked them arriving in France. Then the global alert led them to Malaga, Spain. That's where police spotted them in a car and arrested them, despite their pleas to leave them in peace.
He's very sick. I just want to get on with his treatment. And I'm not coming back to England if I cannot give him the treatment I want.
Announcing their arrest, it was obvious authorities in England feel bad for the family's medical struggle.
I've said all along that this must be a terribly distressing time for Asha's family. And I stand by that now. I think it's been a dreadful period for them.
Asha is now at a hospital in Malaga and shows no signs of distress. British police are headed to Spain to continue investigating Asha's disappearance.
Still to come in our broadcast tonight, EU leaders threaten new sanctions against Russia over the Ukraine crisis. Locally, a motorcyclist killed in a crash involving a PLA vehicle. And an effort to instill interest in Cantonese opera among the younger generation.